2 additional clips.
They had that Susan picture was awesome.
I was watching a screening of the house, and my 14-year-old was in the room, and just with that, and then that last one on, he jumped. Andrew,
Yes.
thank you for this amazing story.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Chris, this is you for making it happen.
So many things. Hopefully it landed. I know for some of you at the beginning of the season, you're like, man, they're changing a lot of things. I'm not sure. You know, and hopefully we've shown you why and landed it all. We feel like it's told you everything. By the way, the super scary sergeant who's like, got shot on that guy. His idea to have a toothy cow clean him out. Pretty awesome. Yeah.
We wanted to put a Squeedlin in the last scene, like a Squeedlin to run out of the forest and be a part of the army, but it didn't happen like that. Hopefully it won't then. Any thoughts or comments?
Questions, comments?
Yeah?
Lots of it.
Yes.
I'm not gonna lie, the Fort Factory scene, spot on with the details. It was just
Yes.
like your book.
Awesome. That's so good. Yeah. We couldn't wait to show people that. That's so fun. Because you kind of forget about Sarah over the course of the show.
You do.
And then it's like, oh, that's right. She's...
That's right. I remember her.
Yes.
I really like this Wingfeather.
The very end.
I think that there should have been more.
There's going to be more. There should be more. Yeah, back there. Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. I'm sorry. Anybody else?
This guy right here?
Yes.
I feel like Zuzab is gonna make another appearance in the show.
Have you read book 2?
Yes, but he doesn't make it. He doesn't actually make an appearance in the book. So I'm curious to see what work you have for him in the
Yeah,
season.
we shall see. We shall see. Yeah, is that a question back there?
Yes, 2 things. One, I couldn't tell exactly what happened in Slarg's death. It was a little bit unclear. Like, did Peter Nugget show up, or did Poto kill him? Because since that part was in Saga, it's kind of a bit unclear.
Yeah.
And was that Ridge Runner Zuzab or Mowgli?
That is a great question. That runner, the Ridge Runner at the end was Zuzab, yes. And yes, Slarb got what was coming to him in that scene. That was Poto stabbing him and throwing him into a pile of fire. But he does not survive. That is the end of Zuzab. Yeah.
Yeah, so I will tell you guys, we talked about this before, but like, you know, we wanted to make a really satisfying fight between Poto and Slarb. They even kind of at odds all season. It was like this ending at Wingfeather Manor seemed like a great place. How many of you were surprised at Nugget digging them out of the chamber? That was kind of fun. We realized for them to climb out of a thing that had just been burned was going to be really like a leap of imagination. So we're like, what if Nugget just digs them out? Like that'd be kind of fun. And it was one of those points in the script where like, how do you do that? It sounds really complicated, you know. And so sad, like it's a mixture of a lot of CG and 2D and all kinds of fun stuff. A little bit of 2D animation in there to make the dirt fall down and all that. So yeah, it's one of
There's a
those
question way back there in the background.
Okay, so I thought that was an amazing episode.
Thank you.
But one question I have.
What? There's no Just kidding.
I really liked it, and I think the plot changes were really good. They made it make a lot of sense. But one thing I've been wondering is, since book 2 starts to pick up the pace, will you be following the plot more closely in season 2?
Oh, interesting. I think, I think in general.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in my mind, I think we are following the plot very closely. We may not be following the little minutia along the way, but the arc of the plot is the same, you know?
Right.
And so we have a little more freedom. And that, like, one of the most difficult things in writing the Wingfeather Saga is when you're in book 1, you have to do so much groundwork. Like, there's all of this world that you have to gracefully try to show people how the world works and who the characters are. And after book 1 is done and that massive pile of work is out of the way, it's like you're off to the races and you can just go. And so I feel a little bit of that with season 2, where like we've got the story pretty well established and the beats of the story mapped out in a way that aligns pretty closely. But there will always be little changes just because not everything works. You know?
Right, yeah.
So yeah, there are some moves that we have to make in order to make it fit. And honestly, there are a few plot holes. You know, there are moments in the story where when you really start drilling down, you're like, hey, wait, this timeline doesn't exactly line up, and you wouldn't necessarily notice it in the book, but if you were watching it in the show, it would be glaring. So we've got to tighten up some of that stuff. So yeah, I think, but my sense is that I would say that season 2 seems to follow more closely.
Yeah, there's just a lot, as you guys probably all read it, whenever that was, but there's a lot more plot in season 2. It's like things are happening, or in book 2 rather, you know, and so we get to, that are like big moves, right? Like they're gonna go to here. And so, yes, I would say that how that unfolds. Now, there's appearances in, we just watched episode 7 yesterday of season 2 in animatics. So the blueprints, basically, we looked at the blueprints yesterday. And so, you know, have a really good sense of where that's gonna go, and it's really great. It's almost like Invergent, we were talking about this, because it starts with a bang. Like it's just like action right out of the gate. As you know, the book does that too. And then it kind of settles into the story. Season 1 thematically is about pulling this family together and revealing their identity, who they are, and what their purpose is. And season 2 is really about breaking them apart and seeing what happens, right? How do the characters deal with being separated?
I love the way you put it earlier. It's like season 2 starts, the family's all together on the run, and then there's the chapter called The Sundering, which is in where, I won't spoil anything, but where Janner finds himself alone for the first time. And that's, I remember when I was writing the story, that's where the story, like, really, the gas in the engine kind of really came. Because once the kid doesn't have anybody to turn to get him out of trouble, and it's up to Janner to figure this thing out, it's a lot easier to write. It's more riveting, I think, to write. And so, yeah, it starts off with the family and isolates. And then what you pointed out was season 3, I won't tell you exactly how it's all going to break down, but then all these characters are split up and then they grow. They have these things that they encounter and their characters change. And then what does it look like when they come back together with each of them having grown the way that they have, which is book 3, basically. You know? And so, not that the seasons are lined up. That's a great question. It's funny how when I'm watching this, the books and the series are getting all muddled in my mind. You know, certain scenes I'm like, oh yeah, that's how it was, and then it's like, nope, that's not exactly how it was. But it just, to me, it's like a distilling of the story into its like most essential parts.
Yeah, because it's not that I really mind the changes, it's more that it can be confusing if you read the books and you watch the series.
Yeah.
And I just kind of like things to line up.
Yeah. I get that, yeah.
Well, I get it with you too.
We're trying, I will say that, like, I'm like you, like, there's certain things in, like, the Lord of the Rings movies where I'm like, I don't mind if they move some stuff around, but man, I hope they get that one scene right. You know what I mean? And that's how I felt about the final scene in this book, or in this episode, when she reveals that they are the jewels of Manira. That feels to me like it was pitch perfect, exactly how I wanted it to feel and the way that it felt in the book. So I think those key scenes are the ones that like everybody's really conscious of making sure we get right. So.
Yeah.
How many of you have not read the books? Just curious. Anybody here not read the books? A few people. Okay. Was it a surprise to you that they were the jewels of Manira?
Oh, good. That's awesome.
I mean, honestly, like, you know, when I was reading the books, my kids were ahead of me, like, oh yeah. And I was like, what? That's amazing. Yeah. So we're hoping the TV series that, you know, some will go ahead of us. But we really tried to push the viewer off with her having those packages, you know, which are important, but like trying to really give them a good MacGuffin to believe something else, and so that it pays off. I have to say, Kurt Heineke and Isaac from Arcadian Wild and Ben Shive worked, well, I would say Kurt and Isaac particularly just worked over and over for the last scene, all the score in that section. It was, a lot of what we did in the TV series is series episodic where we have certain themes that you will hear over and over. This is a happy scene, this is a thoughtful scene, and that's just, it's not custom scored every episode, it's very expensive for that. But that section was so custom, like it's like there's so many things happening emotionally that we had to do, and they submitted a full round of it, we threw it out. They submitted a second round, threw it out. A third round also threw it out, but they got close. And then that fourth round was the one that was like, okay, now we've got what we need. And they just worked really, really, really hard. Right up to literally the day of mixing. I think Kurt said, I just finished this morning at 4, and we were and it was all in there. And it was just a heroic lift that for us was like, okay, now that scene is right.
Yeah, we originally, sorry, you have a question. You've been patiently
Great.
waiting. Yes.
What does that mean?
That's a great question.
Yeah, man.
Why are regenerators like that?
Why is anybody mean, man? I don't know. I think Zuzab is mainly interested in one thing. Can you guess what it is? Fruit. I don't, yeah, it's just he and his people, all they care about is themselves and getting fruit. And if all you care about is yourself and getting stuff, then it's going to turn you into a pretty mean person. Yeah.
What's your question?
How are you gonna make the burger not look so close?
Oh my gosh.
Oh boy.
So scary.
Yeah, we got it designed. Yeah, the character design.
Yeah, Gardner Rockroach is a super, super scary character. Yes, Dan?
Andrew, what was the spark that fired your imagination to want to write this series?
It would have been, there's a whole lot of sparks, I think. I think the kind of inciting incident for me to get busy and actually try to write it was reading the Narnia books to my kids and being so, we had read a lot of stories together as a family, but then reading those books when my kids were at an age to pay attention to a long story, I just was a mess. I cried so much in the process because I was so moved by the way, not just what the story was doing to them, but what it does to you while you're reading it to them. There's this whole thing that's happening, and I had grown up reading fantasy novels, really loved big, epic fantasy, and so I was like, just gotta try to do it. So, the kids in the story are based loosely on my own kids, very, very loosely. In that there's 2 boys and a girl. That's kind of weirdly the kids grew into some of the traits of the kids in the books. My daughter ended up being this musician, and so in my next book, all the kids are going to be doctors and lawyers. But yeah, the kids were the inspiration. I just kind of at the time was trying to figure out. I was learning a lot about identity, my own identity as a Christian being who is believing that I am who God says I am, not just who I think of myself as, or who maybe the enemy of my heart says I am. So I wanted my kids to know that they belong to someone and that they are beloved, and to write a story that would kind of like get at the heart of that somehow. I didn't exactly know how I was going to get there, but that was the desire that I had when I was writing the story.
Well, this final episode achieves that.
Awesome, that's great.
Hey, I'll just tell you all, I had a conversation after the last time we were here with my daughter Charlotte, who some of you met, who's 12, and she was talking about really what the heart of the show has been, which is to create a episodic television series for families with their kids. That adults, we all have shows we like to watch that we would not watch with our children, right? And then a lot of kid shows, they're really tough for adults, right? And that middle space is tough because you get into like the PG-13 world of Star Wars or Marvel, and like it's just, it's a lot to work through. Which one of the Disney series? And I was with some of my older teens. We have age 23 down to 12, and I was like, oh, certain violence, certain kind of things. I'm like, that's not what we want to process, right? And I was so thrilled to put something out, right? That hopefully families like yours and others can go, that's a show for us. We can sit down chapter by chapter and explore the story together and talk about it and enjoy it and wonder what's going to happen next. Because there's a gap, right? There's a thing. So I will tell you, it is super important to us that you tell other families about the series. That is the only way we're going to keep making it, is if lots more families know about it. And we're going to do our job to market it and so forth. But word of mouth goes way further. It just does. It just goes a lot further in someone telling you, you got to check the series out, it's really good. And you're like, maybe, right? And maybe they watch the first episode and are like, not sure. I had that certain experience recently with Andor. The first couple episodes, I'm like, I'm not sure what I'm watching. I don't know. And then, oh, I know exactly. Like, it was great. But you have to have patience. And I think for ours, we know we're here to tell you a big, long tale. And you have to sit and be patient for a minute while we bring you into it. So anyways, please, that is just the place. Now that all episodes are available starting Friday, that's really the mantra, is just keep telling people about it, and you guys watch it again if you want to, and yeah, all that stuff.
I'm just curious, are there any investors in here? Anybody who invested in anything? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It moves me every time we see that list of 10,000 names that scrolls. Sorry. We couldn't have done it without a lot of people believing in it, so it's really, really wonderful. This wasn't made by just some company or some rich guy, you know, it was a whole bunch of people who came together. So I hope you feel the satisfaction of seeing this thing that you helped make happen, so thank you. Yeah.
Yes, and
What is the date of the release of the Wingfeather robot?
Do we have a date?
Is Crocs right here? I don't know. Its official launch is not until April, I think.
Yeah, it's not long.
Couple weeks. Yeah.
Couple weeks, maybe a month, something like that.
Did you guys see the scene when they're standing out front of the manor and they look over and see this army, and Pete's like, "Oh, things coming!" And he kind of freaks out. That was animated, I believe, by Mr. Bo Sherman back here. Bo's one of our animators. Also helps us with taking photos behind the scenes, everything. But we have so many of our team. Today we got to do a crew screening of this, and we have team, all around the world. And so we're on Zoom with all these faces, and they're all in their respective homes all over the place, and are just thrilled to be a part of the project. And we're thrilled to be able to hire them to do the project, right? And they're all excited to come back in April and help us on season 2. And so it's a really amazing family that you don't get to see all of them. So when we see these names on here, we know all those people, and they're all in. I think that's what I just want to communicate to you, is that these are people who are not just doing a job. They're like, I want this story to keep going, which is really.
And I think you can see that in the work that they do, because they're all doing work that's like turned up to a few notches from what they have to do. It's like there's so many moments where I'm like, wow, they really thought about how to make that moment happen. There's a scene where it shows Nugget in like episode 3, and Nugget's like in the background, and he's kind of just doing dog stuff, kind of moving his paws around. And that represents a lot of work. Somebody had to sit there and go, what would the dog be doing in the very bottom right corner of the screen, and make him do something interesting, right? So it's like the whole team is that way. They've looked at every little corner of this show and tried really hard to make it as beautiful as possible. So we're very grateful. We don't deserve it. And I think a lot of it is that a lot of these folks, they've grown up, they've had careers in the animation industry, which can mean big movies, it can mean commercials, So I think a lot of them got into it because they love stories. And this is a story that they're like, finally, we get to do this thing that we really want to do. We're gonna, I'm not gonna make some TV commercial, I'm gonna make an epic tale. And man, it's just a delight to see how thrilled they are about it.
Yeah. Come on, question. Yes.
Okay, so I'm not trying to give too many spoilers
Mm.
to all of y'all out there. But I'm really, really intrigued to see what the Stranders, specifically Morale, she's my favorite girl character. Jenny's my favorite boy. Sorry. And also probably the Stonekeeper and the way that setup is gonna work. Because for the fourth factory, we made sure it was really eerie and factory, but also haunting, and made sure that that image stayed in your mind. I could tell you guys put a lot of work into that, but if I can say, make sure you do that too with the Stonekeeper and the diet and all of that, because that is a really influential part of the rest.
Yeah, well, you've already met her, obviously, in episode 2, so we know what she looks and sounds like. And now we have to see her in her space, right?
Yes, I thought it was so cool the way y'all animated her. It was spot on.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
That's awesome. Yes.
So in whatever episode the Stonekeeper was in, the book said she had black hair.
Yeah.
It looks kind of like she had white hair.
Yeah, we kind of played with that a little bit. So she's got a
She
mom.
goes to a beautician and she changes her hair.
Yeah.
The mom has black hair.
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure she looked very different than Murga. It does Amra. So we wanted to make sure she looked different than Murga. So we kind of thought about both of them together.
All right, sorry.
I was just curious if you could recall what it felt like for you whenever you saw this book that you written come to life.
Okay, ask it one more time.
Just what you were feeling whenever
Oh, right. I just cried and cried. I really did. It was one of the weirdest. It was a very surreal feeling. Like Jamie and I have sat on the couch reviewing, like, sometimes we'll get early versions of the episodes, and we'll look at each other and we'll be like, this just came out of our brain, or my brain, whatever. Like, it's hard to convey what a weird feeling it is. And also, the fact that I've gotten to be as involved as I am, that like, I've had a say in like what some of the stuff looks like and feels like, which an author doesn't usually get to do. Usually you just kind of have to show up at the release and hope that it doesn't stink. And so being a part of it means that it does stay very close to what I picture in my head, which is the coolest. Yeah. So one more. This guy right here.
I noticed you didn't put the scene you showed at the last screening of Slarb coming through the fence.
So what I showed you last time was actually we call them tracker fangs. Misha, we named them actually, why not? We had a habit early on of Fang A, Fang B, and I was like, so confusing. Let's give them names. And so Doug McCullough gave us a bunch of names. He gave us a bunch of names, and we just gave them real names. And those are tracker fangs. We wanted to play with the idea that there are fangs that are more animal-like, and then ones that are more articulate, like General Crab, like he's quite intelligent, and then Slarb somewhere between. And so the tracker fangs, you'll notice they just made sounds. They didn't ever talk, We actually, that's not true. We had one clip where they threw in some wall of dialogue to one of the fangs. I'm gonna get you. Like, it was like in a fight with Coda. I was like, oh, nope, just make hissing sounds, please. But those ones are more animalistic, right? And that was one of those fangs that came leaping to attack Coda that I showed you last time. We cut it where you saw what happened. That sound that they make, we went round and round on that because they were doing like
a wolf, in the beginning when the tracker thing goes, "Arr!" He had to put like a wolf sound in it. And I was like, no, he's not a wolf, he's a lizard. And so when we finally heard it, I was like, that's perfect, that's it. And the sound guy, Adam, was like, well, good, because it's me sucking in my breath going, created the sound himself. It was pretty amazing.
now you won't be able to not hear
Yeah,
that.
every time you see it, you're going to picture a guy like, here goes take 7.
Okay, we're going to say goodnight, but I'm going to give you one more thing, so don't move. We're going to do one more thing, and then we're going to say goodnight, and thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everybody.
Walk back here.